topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Well, welcome to the Bill Martinez Show. Great to have you with us, sharing a part of your day. Our next guest, his reputation has preceded him. But for those of you that are still learning about the prophetic voice of one Rabbi Jonathan Cahn, let me remind you here, or at least update you if you need some updating. Jonathan Cahn caused a worldwide stir with the release of his explosive first book, The Harbinger, which became an instant New York Times bestseller, brought him to national and international prominence. His next 4 books were all New York Times bestsellers: The Mystery of the Shemitah, The Book of Mysteries, The Paradigm, and the highest debuting book, The Oracle. Long before writing these books, he was known for opening the deep mysteries of Scripture and bringing forth messages of prophetic import. He leads Hope of the World, an international outreach of the world, an outreach of the word, teachings and compassion projects for the needy around the world. He also leads the Jerusalem Center Beth Israel, made up of people of all backgrounds just outside of New York City in Wayne, New Jersey. Called the prophetic voice of the generation, Rabbi Cahn is a much sought-after speaker and has been highlighted in the New York Times as well as many national and international media. He has spoken to the United Nations on Capitol Hill and to millions of people around the world. I welcome our good friend, Rabbi Jonathan Cahn. Jonathan, welcome to the show. Good to have you with us.
Great to be with you always, Bill.
Well, I got to tell you, Jonathan, I am so excited to talk about this latest New York Times bestseller, the Josiah Manifesto. It's the ancient mystery and guide for the end times, as mind-blowing as all your bestsellers, with something a little bit different. The blueprint, the answer, the manifesto. The Josiah Manifesto opens up the stunning mysteries that lie behind the dramatic events of recent times and have changed our world, and the message hidden within them with regard to what lies ahead. Is there an answer, a guide, a blueprint that reveals what we need to know to survive, to stand, to prevail in view of what's coming in the days ahead? Right, Jonathan?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. This is, Bill, I knew I had to write this book on the last day, on the day I finished the last book, The Return of the Gods. I knew from that moment I had to do this. And this is, I would say this: what if God was speaking to us? What if he was giving us a revelation of where we are prophetically, where we are going, what lies ahead, how to prepare for that, how to stand, how to prevail? There's as an answer or a blueprint or a guide, about what we are to do. Is there such a guide in the Bible that God is pointing to? And the other thing is that what if what we are watching in our days, what if behind all these events, everything we've been through, it's actually an ancient mystery and an ancient calendar of God that actually ordains the events of our times and actually even gives the timing of those events. And this is what the Josiah Manifesto is going to open up, is going to reveal. And it's really, in many ways, Bill, it's the mysteries that kind of began with other books like The Harbinger and all the way to The Return of the Gods are kind of coming home and coming together in the Josiah Manifesto. And then it opens up a key about what is the key, what do we need to know. So the first part of the book are the mysteries, what is happening. The last part is what is the plan? Is God giving us a blueprint about what to do?
Well, as you pointed out in your previous books, Jonathan, there seems to be a consistent model about our God, who says he's the same yesterday and forever. He also tells us in the Old Testament that a people without vision, people without revelation will perish. So that reminds us that God is revealing things that, at their appropriate time to us. The question is, are we listening, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's one of the things that have been, I believe, in all the books I've done is that it's showing that the God of the Bible is alive and well, and the
Yes.
same way that he was real back then in every human event, so in our time as well.
Mhm.
And then the ultimate thing is, first, what is he saying? What is he
Right.
speaking? Is he calling us? Is he warning us? Is he giving us away? Well, that's what I really all the books I have written are along those lines.
Mhm.
Is he unfolding his plan in our day?
Exactly.
This one, more than any other, goes to the answer. But
Yes.
it is all that God is real, and we have to respond.
Without a doubt. It was quite interesting. I open up the first chapter and you take me to Cuba. I'm like, Cuba? Come on. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, no, I'm not kidding. Well, this is in many ways the book is it begins as kind of a prophetic journey, a prophetic
Mhm.
puzzle piece, putting all the pieces together that then
Right.
they come together to open it up. And so it begins on the island of Cuba, as you said, and there's so much there. I won't go through a lot of it, but I was asked to go to Cuba when Fidel Castro opened the island up for 1 month of, quote, religious freedom. He was going to
Mhm.
allow believers to have open air events and throughout the entire island. They asked me to come and open it up with the sound of the shofar, and then journey with it the events, which ended in Havana, Revolution Square, with Fidel Castro. He came, and
Mhm.
the thing is, God opened the door for me to enter into his presidential palace, and give him some gifts. And actually, I don't know if I said this, Bill,
Mhm.
but before I even left, I was basically given a word that this was going to happen, that I was going
Mhm.
to enter the palace of the king, the word said. And
Right.
so I had prepared to give him, and I gave him 3 gifts. One was a Bible, which are banned in Cuba,
Mhm.
and 2 was a shofar, the sign of the Jubilee. The message I kept sharing was the Jubilee. So,
Right.
and the third one was a piece of paper where I gave him a message, and it had to do with the Jubilee. Now, it turned out that it was very prophetic because he came to power in 1959. He would be in power. What basically the word given him was giving him the exact time he would have left.
Yes.
We were praying that he would really open things up afterwards. He didn't, but the revival never stopped. But
Mhm.
his reign would end. And when it ended, it was according to the mystery of the Jubilee, which is what I gave him.
Wow.
And it ended up, his reign ended in the year, the year of Jubilee of his 50th year in power, the 50th day, the Jubilean day, and the exact hour, 50 years,
Wow.
50 days, the exact hour from when Batista, the dictator before, resigned. He resigned in the same way. So it's amazing. God is in charge of everything. That kind of sets up the stage for the Jubilee, which has everything to do with our lives.
Here you are, you're a guest. You go and meet up with this communist ruler, and you have, I mean, you got news for him, and it's not all that great. It's like, hey, guess what? The stage is starting, the curtain is starting to come down on your stage, right?
Yeah, well, God is saying, "Listen, I'm in charge." I'm in charge of human history. I mean, when you
Yeah.
think about it, the American government, the CIA, tried everything to get Fidel Castro out of power. It
Right.
ended up it was Leviticus 25, the Jubilee of God, that actually did it. God is in charge of every single event, and this thing is going to go to our times. It has actually affected the mystery of the Jubilee. Actually, has affected our lives.
Well, yeah, and you point this out throughout the book of Josiah Manifesto, which, Jonathan, right now, how can people get their hands on this book?
Yeah, the Josiah Manifesto is literally everywhere. It just came out, so
Mhm.
this is, just came out yesterday
Yeah.
from this, but it's everywhere, wherever there are books, Barnes and Noble, I mean, from, Amazon right now online, every place online has it. Walmart even has it. It's really everywhere. And it's Christian and secular have it. But I pray
Mhm.
people get it, not just for themselves, but also for people in their lives,
With,
because we all
without
need to hear. It looks like this. I know you're going to hold it up, but that's the only copy I have.
exactly. Yeah. No, I get that. So we'll definitely remind people quite often throughout this interview again to get their hands on the book, because as more and more that you reveal, especially now because you use the Jubilean model throughout this book, and it's the cycle of 50 years, and how it we go to Cuba, and then we come to the United States of America, and we see the same model repeating itself, right?
Yeah, the Jubilee, and people have an idea of it. Jubilee is, of course, the 50th year, and it was a year for many people. I mean, of course, it's a good thing in so many ways. It was restoration. It was being set free, but it was a reversal of what had been before. It undid it. If you lost your land, you got it back. But there was another side to the Jubilee. If you took somebody's land, or you took what wasn't yours, it was taken from you in the year of Jubilee. Just like with Fidel Castro,
Right.
He took this power, it was taken from him in the year of Jubilee. So there's another side to it, which is the side of judgment and redemption. We're going to see both things at work. But the thing is that's one part of the puzzle piece. And the other part is, the prophet Jeremiah is prophesying over the valley of Hinnom, where the Israelites lifted up their babies, and they, to sacrifice them. And
Exactly.
God, and he said, basically, you're going to be judged, for this. And the principle in the Bible is that, what a nation or civilization does to its children, it's innocent, it's going to be done to it. Whatever, if you take life, life is going to be taken. So put that together. And one of the forms that it says the judgment was going to come to Israel for what they did to the children, it says it will come in the form of, in Hebrew, a dever gadol, which in Hebrew means a great plague, or a massive pandemic.
Mhm.
So now look at what happened. When did America begin taking the lives of its children? Well, it wasn't 73, it was 1970. That's when abortion on demand began in America.
Right.
What is the Jubilean year of that? Well, that is the year 2020. Anything happen? The year 2020, a plague comes upon America, comes on the world, who's, by the way, this generation of the world has offered up more children than any other, but America has actually been leading this.
Yes.
And so it comes upon America. And the other thing is that the actual date, there was a day that abortion on demand first entered to America. The very beginning was in the New York legislature. And it happened when the bill was introduced. It was going to change New York. It was going to lead to Roe versus Wade. It was introduced on January 20th, 1970. Well, go 50 years later, Jubilee, where does it take you? It takes you to January 20th, 2020. Anything happen? January 20th, 2020 is the day that the plague comes to America officially. Right. It's the day of patient zero. And so it is 50 years, one Jubilee, 50 years exactly to the date from when we began the shedding of the blood of the children to the plague, exactly to the day.
We're talking with Rabbi Jonathan Cahn, his new book, The Josiah Manifesto, The Ancient Mystery and Guide for the End Times. Jonathan, also bring into perspective, because my understanding was Hawaii was instrumental in the introduction of abortion. It was passed by their legislature. The governor refused to sign it, but yet it kind of came into law by default.
That's exactly right. Hawaii was the first to legalize it on American soil. New York was the first to introduce it to the continent and the first to introduce it in the legislature before Hawaii. But that's very significant. Yes, Hawaii. So that's the very beginning. That when it happened, and everything you said is exactly how it happened. Kind of unlikely, but it just happened. And it happened. The date was March 11th. That's when abortion on demand actually begins on American soil in Hawaii, American soil. Well, okay, let's go 50 years later. Let's go one Jubilee and see if there at least anything. It leads you to March 11th, 2020. Anything happen? March 11th, 2020 is the day that all the media identifies as the day the plague changed everything. It was the day that the quarantine came on America, the day that Trump announced to address the nation, the day that the lockdowns came, the day that the stock market, everything. It's the day when the force of this plague fell on America. 50 years to the date when abortion fell on America.
And amazing that even the title of the pandemic, COVID-19, explain to our audience the significance of that title and the number 19, how that plays.
Yeah, there's actually, in the very first book I wrote, Bill, which is The Harbinger, I allude to this because the prophet and Noriel are talking. And Noriel says, well, how long is it from that first shaking when the attack comes on the land? how long is it till the next main shaking or destruction? Well, well, and he says, and I knew the answer was 19.
Right.
And I said, but I didn't want people to set dates. So the prophet says about 20, but that's what he was saying. So, but that's what he was referring to. It was 586 BC when the armies of Babylon made that first strike on the land. And then it was 19 years later when the greater shakings came. Well, with America, it was 9/11. It was 2001. Well, so when is the 19th year? The 19th year is the year 2020. Same thing, 2020. And on top of it, 19, as you said, what do they call the plague? They call it COVID, and then the number 19, which is a number, by the way, linked to judgment.
Yeah, exactly. And COVID, the term in terms of its relationship to a crown, right?
Yes. Yeah, the place where, and I open up, with Jeremiah prophesying over that valley of Hinnom. They offered up their children on the altars to Baal and Moloch in the valley of Hinnom. And, actually we get the word for hell, Gehenna, comes from the valley of Hinnom.
Right.
And he prophesies that. So, and what he's saying is that where you did this, it's coming back. You made this a place of death for the children. Well, death is coming back to the same place. Well, here's the thing. Does America have a valley of Hinnom? It does. The valley of Hinnom of America is New York. And the reason is, number one, that is where it entered the continent. But secondly, New York from that day on is the abortion capital of America. More children, the blood is shed there in New York than any other place in America. So what would that say according to the mystery? Well, the mystery is that the death that comes is going to focus on there. That's exactly what happened. Exactly. When this plague came to America, and when America became the center of this pandemic in the world, at that moment, New York becomes the center of America, which is the center of the world. New York becomes the global pandemic. America's abortion capital becomes the plague capital. And the thing is, there was so much happening, it was 1 out of every 2 people in America who were getting struck in New York, if you can believe it. And then the other thing is that New York passed a gigantic milestone on April 10th of that year, because April 10th, there were more cases of this plague in New York than there were in any other nation, including China, including every other nation. And so April 10th, anything about that? Go back 50 years, and it takes you to April 10th, 1970. Anything happen? New York legalized abortion in New York on April 10th, 1970.
And you look at the numbers, Jonathan, you break them down in the book, abortion numbers, and it seemed from that point forward, the numbers rose exponentially, which seems to be corresponding with the number of infections with COVID.
Yeah. The way it spread, first, there's a mystery to that, because the Bible speaks about gates a lot, and judgment comes to the gates, and right. Things come through the gates. Well, does America have a gate? Yeah, it's New York. It's always been New York. New York is the gate. And the thing is, it wasn't just that abortion came to New York at the beginning. It came through New York. In fact, Bill, in those first 5 years until Roe versus Wade, 70 to 73, most abortions in America were performed in New York. People would come there and it would spread to the nation. But the thing is that, so when the plague comes 50 years later, they found out, they didn't know at the beginning, but they looked at the genes of the DNA of the plague, of the virus. And you know what they found out? The majority of cases of the plague came through the gate of New York, just like the abortion came, same thing. Then in the same year, 1970, there was one other gate in the continent, and that was Washington State. And that was the other gate through which abortion came to the continent. Well, 50 years later, guess what? The plague comes through 2 gates. The other gate is Washington State, the Western Gate, and the very first case, patient 0, is through there, which is identified on 50 years to the day that abortion begins in New York, that the bill comes. So it's amazing. And the other thing is, so if anybody had COVID, that virus bore witness, had the markers of the 2 gates through which America began shedding its children exactly 50 years before. And when you speak about the numbers, because that was like the last thing, it's almost like, the unavoidable question. Right. That, Jeremiah says, well, what's going to happen is going to match what you did to the children. Well, so I thought, could it match? And so the question is, how many children were killed in that first, that critical 3-year window from the entrance of abortion to Roe versus Wade? The number is 1.3 million. Well, 50 years later, you have another 3-year window that matches it year for year, Jubilee. It's 2020 to 2023. How many Americans, how many did the plague strike? 1.3 million. It struck 1.3 million. Wow. That matches the 1.3 million children.
Are we in judgment?
I believe we are in judgment. I don't believe it has to be the end, but I believe we are in the process of judgment and we are heading to calamity, but there is also hope, which I will get to at the end, but yes, that is all part of it as well.
Again, we're talking with Rabbi Jonathan Cahn, his just released book, The Josiah Manifesto, The Ancient Mystery and Guide for the End Times. And Jonathan, I cannot thank you enough for you addressing this critical issue. Hearts have been crying. We read in the Old Testament, when Cain killed Abel, God says that your brother's blood is crying out unto heaven. You imagine the cries that have been crying out to heaven for 50 years of the murders of these innocent children, 60,000 roughly estimated. Those that try to keep tab of these numbers say that doesn't even account those that have been chemically aborted, which is easily probably another 40,000 that have been murdered along the way. I should say 40 million. I'm sorry. But here it is. So you imagine what the screaming sound in heaven must sound like because of the shed blood of innocents.
Yeah. We say that, because it's the truth. And we've been saying that for years, like, how can you kill 60 million children and not have any consequences? Well, here what we're opening up today, Bill, is that there are consequences. The consequences are quite exact. And in many ways, it's merciful compared to what we did. But still, it's a wake-up call. It's a gigantic wake-up call, but it's an exact parallel. So yeah, you cannot do that and not have consequences. The blood, God sees the blood of the children and hears the voices of the children.
Jonathan, you made reference to the Jeremiah question, and I wanted to unfold that a little bit more, if you would, please.
Yeah, the question is along the lines of, could it match exactly? And the numbers and those things, I will tell you. So that's where the 1.3 million and the 1.3 million. But actually, at one point, I actually took other statistics which broke it down like to the tens of thousands. It was something like I have that in the book, but it's like 1.2 point, whatever the thing is. When you do that for those who were killed in the time of the first 3 years of abortion, you do that with those who were killed in the 3 years of the plague. It's like I think it was like a 99.9% correlation. I mean, That's how exact this is.
Well, because God is exact.
Yeah.
God knows numbers, right? Yeah. He knows the numbers of of our hair on our heads. Yeah. And so he knows this. So it's not some sort of, some almighty, finger in the air, just feeling like, the wind blows and this sounds like a good number to use, right?
Yeah. Bill, I mean, you just said something that just triggered something here. It may be that it was the exact number. God knows the exact number of children. It may be that it was the exact number. What I just looked at, and this is, this by statistics where there are variables because, underreporting, overreporting, but it goes to that 99.9%. The answer is probably what you just alluded to, which it probably was the exact per the child. That's what it's about.
Rabbi Jonathan Cahn is with us. Josiah Manifesto, his new book, is what we're talking about. I've shared with Jonathan, continually. In fact, he didn't quite understand what I meant. And he just would kind of go along and just, because he's so gracious, because I told him, I said, oh my goodness, another revelation, you chicken skinned me. And so I had to explain to him later because it finally became evident because we were face to face and talking about it. And he had that kind of quizzical look, chicken skin. What do you mean by that? And I said, goosebumps. And this is the thing that Jonathan brings to the conversation, and in every one of his books, is that it is, one of those oh yeah moments where the light bulb goes on and it's so bright, it's undeniable that you know that it comes from the throne room of God. It's true revelation. And and I just so appreciate not only his grace that he puts up with me and my own mannerisms and references.
It's wonderful, Bill. It's a joy, truly.
Well, I want to talk about how in the book, in the Josiah Manifesto, you tie in January the 6th.
Yeah.
Break that down.
Yeah. And to set the stage of that, and this is not, by the way, it's not getting political. It's a matter of something biblical here. As I said, like a lot of the mysteries from the other books are actually coming home in the Josiah Manifesto. Exactly. One of them was called the paradigm. And the paradigm, you see how the parallels between modern leaders and ancient leaders, and it's like eerie. But one thing behind Donald Trump, and it's not about Donald Trump, but the thing, and it's not that he even knows it, but Donald Trump is following the paradigm or the parallel in the Bible of a man called Jehu. Jehu was wild. Donald Trump's wild. Jehu was unpredictable. Donald Trump. Jehu was a fighter. Donald Trump fights with everybody. Jehu we don't know where he was with God, but he was used of God. And he was used at a certain time when the nation was falling from God, and he rose to the throne. He begins a chariot race. He begins a race to the throne on his chariot. And so Donald Trump begins a race to the White House. And Jehu makes an alliance with the religious conservatives of the nation. So Donald Trump. He actually makes a partnership with one of them. So did Donald Trump. And then Jehu comes face to face with the nation's former first lady. Showdown with the nation's former first lady, Jehu. So did Trump. And everybody was saying Hillary was going to win. Well, the paradigm said the modern day Jehu is going to win. And he did. Then Jehu comes to the capital city with an agenda to, quote, drain the swamp. And that's basically what Trump came with. Now, there's so much more to this, but I will just say a few things. One, January 6th, there is a template in the Bible. Now, this template it's in the Bible. It is spoken of in the paradigm, that book, but it came true years after I wrote the paradigm. So that's why I put it in the manifesto, Josiah Manifesto. It's this: the Jehu gathers people together in the capital city. He calls them to come to the capital city. So did Trump on January 6th. The people of Jehu go down to this great Capitol building. So do the people of Trump. The people of Jehu surround the building. So do the people of Trump. The people of Jehu enter the building. They lay siege to the building while proceedings are going on. So did the people of Trump. And the thing, this is not about what Trump said or did, but simply it happened. Now, the interesting thing, there's a lot of significance to this. But one of the things is that, hold on. Did I just drop my microphone?
Yeah, you just dropped your mic. Okay.
Okay, hold on. Hold on. It's the first time I've had a mic here. So, okay. So the thing is that at the end of January 6th, that week, the Capitol Police, they announced how many people they had arrested on site. It became the number, made headlines. They said, we have arrested 80 people on site who were part of this. Well, in the account of Jehu and the storming of that Capitol building, it says the number, it says Shmonim Ish. It says how many people were involved. It says, or went in, it cites 80 people, the same exact number of January 6th. And so there's something about it, because the building that Jehu goes against is the Temple of Baal. And the Temple of Baal is linked to the sacrificing of children. And what's interesting is that when that week came, that was the week that the Congress was taken over by the other party that is actually for the killing of unborn children. So it actually became that just that week, that week, Exactly. And so that's when it began. And so, but here's another thing, Bill, about this kind of it's a foreshadow, because because think about it. There's one king in the Bible who it says he drove Baal out. He pulled down the Temple of Baal. Okay. The Temple of Baal is linked to child sacrifice. So what is that telling us? It's saying that the modern day American Jehu is going to, in some way, he's going to be used to pull down a Temple of Baal. The Temple of Baal in America that allows for the killing of children was Roe versus Wade.
Exactly.
It happened, no matter what you think of Donald Trump was used to overturn Roe versus Wade, the American Temple of Baal, as in the paradigm.
Jonathan, people hear this And I know that even from the paradigm and how you laid that out, and how the trumpet, Donald Trump, would be used of God, and things have not worked out necessarily the way, word for word of what happened in the Old Testament, because we know, Jehu also made sure that Jezebel and her office was done away with, and she was thrown over the side. Now that didn't happen on January the 6th with Hillary Clinton, but he did beat her. So there are some things that people are waiting in terms of some fulfillment here, because it's almost like there's been an interruption in the completion of what Jehu did and what was manifested back then as opposed to now.
That's a fascinating question. Some people were going up to me, Bill, and saying, "Okay, when is Hillary going to fall off a balcony?" And I'm saying, listen, we shouldn't be praying for that. We should be praying for her salvation.
Amen.
But
Amen.
The thing is but here's an interesting thing. It comes true, but in different ways. Interesting thing. I'm going to throw this in, and that is that on the day that her nomination, the Democratic nomination, when she's being nominated to stand against Trump, who is the Jehu, and she's on the other part. That was Jezebel, basically.
Right.
Interesting thing, because the guy who gives this speech, this is like the guy who gives the speech at the Democratic convention makes the speech about Hillary, and this is what he says. He says they tried to do this to her. It says they threw her down, but she wouldn't stay down. They threw her down then, and he keeps going. They threw her down, threw her down, threw her down. If you typed in the words "threw her down" into your computer, it will take you to the Book of Kings, to Jezebel and Jehu. So here he's actually, without knowing it, prophetic is quoting from that without knowing. Speaking of Hillary Clinton, who's going to be standing against Jehu, and what's saying it, she's going to fall. It was a political fall, is what happened. That was pretty. So far, that's been the end of her political career. But the other thing, I'm throwing this in. I didn't plan on it. But the same guy who I mentioned that said they threw her down prophetically, even though he didn't know what he was doing.
Right.
That same guy on the week of January 6th, he leads the prayer in Congress to initiate the new Democratic Congress. Okay. And he prays in the name of a false god, Brahma. So here, that's how that week started, when it was dedicated to a false god by the same guy who did that prophetically, did this prophetically.
Will there be, I feel like I'm asking the question, kind of like, when Jesus was around and his followers believed that he was going to be the redeeming king there. And, we're trying to, we're looking at what's happening in America. We see judgment. You and I have talked about this before. I've been praying for a Nineveh moment. I refer to it as that, just like God forgave Nineveh, the people responded. I mean, they responded to such degree that they were wearing burlap and prayer cloths, and they even put burlap on their animals. That's how severe and intense they responded to God's call, and call for repentance. And I believe the nation is waiting. Although we're seeing bonfires, I know you travel all around the country and the world, and we're witnessing bonfires of revival. I think it's just a matter of time before they link up. And maybe by God's grace and mercy, we would be able to realize a needed revival. Jonathan, what do you think?
Well, one of the mysteries, as we were talking about this, the Jubilee is both restitution, and we saw that side of it, but it's also about redemption.
Yes.
And one of the things we're going to see is that all these mysteries also lead to something that has to do with redemption and the chance for revival. That's why it's called the Josiah. That's why it's all going to lead to when I said it's going to lead to this key that has to do with Josiah, which we'll get to. But so yes, there is a chance for it. Now, the interesting thing, and this goes back to something else you said, because Jehu, we don't know that there was revival when he came. He opened the window for it. He blessed God's people, but we don't know there was revival. In the end, that nation when he was finished, the nation went down. It was continued its head away to judgment. But with Trump, it was like a window, but we didn't have that big revival, that big turning, But the thing is that it could happen again. Number one, we could have that window again, that political window. But ultimately, whether whoever is in the White House, we need to pray for revival, because without revival, doesn't matter what you do politically, it's going to be undone. But with revival, it'll be done. So listen, it could happen. Trump could get back, and the answer isn't Trump, but Trump was a window. So that could that could be part of it. I'm going to throw this in. I'm jumping ahead, but I'm jumping ahead, but I'm just going to mention we have this thing called the return in the middle of that year, and that was what we were hoping. Now we wanted, this is kind of backstage talk. We wanted Trump to call for a National Day of Prayer and Repentance. He didn't end up doing that, but what he did recognize it. He did send a declaration on that day.
Yes.
But I'm hoping if he gets back that we will get that. That's part of the Nineveh moment when the king is part of that. So who knows, but let's start praying.
Well, I remember at DC at the return, you read that declaration.
Yes. Yeah. He gave that, and we were, listen, I'm totally grateful, totally blessed. But the key power would be if this can happen next time, that he would actually call for a national day of prayer. That would be fireworks to the culture.
Yes,
that would. But let's pray for that, because that's Nineveh.
Well, Jonathan, when you look at what Donald Trump did in terms of opening the window and demonstrating a clear contrast of what a blessed nation looks like, because I think we forgot about that. We were so I don't know, maybe we're just so beaten down because of the 8 previous years under the previous administration. And in fact, even, the former president said, well, the best you'll ever do is probably about 2% GDP, putting it in monetary terms. He was setting a limit. And Donald Trump came in and, professed known limits. And of course, the former president kind of mocked him and laughed at him. How dare he? But look what happened when there started to be some alignment and doing the right thing. The jobs started flourishing. People were rejoicing, like the Bible says that when righteousness reigns, the people rejoice. And we started to realize that. And now, it's been taken away, and it really has been taken away. But again, only God knows his intention, because he's in charge. And I think that it's awakening people to realize that, let's go back to what God said to Cahn. If you do right, will it not go well for you? Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And ultimately, there has to be a turning. There has to be revival. Because without that, again, even if we pass all the right laws, they're going to be undone. Because if we don't get if the children don't come to God, that's where it's going to go. And so that's why the battle, the cultural slide did not stop, even with the political change. So we need revival. That's those who are listening, listen. Let this be a first call for us for the future. Now for revival, for a real revival and a real turning and a real Nineveh moment.
Exactly.
But speaking at the same time, God's hand was still at work. And the thing is that one of the things about Jehu is that I said he was used to pull down the temple of Baal. That was where they were killing children. Okay. Now, and Roe versus Wade is the modern day temple of Baal.
Right. Exactly.
Well, so what it's saying us now, this is you can read back in the Paradigm. I think I wrote it in 2017, but it's still, this is there that what it's saying is that the Jehu, the American Jehu, is going to be instrumental in pulling down that. And he was, even after he was out of power, because what he did, this American Jehu, is he put into place 3 Supreme Court justices. The last one happened just in the nick of the last moment of his presidency.
Right.
And that was the one, it was by one vote.
Yes.
That was the one that overturned Roe versus Wade. So even this whole thing about Jehu and the Temple of Baal was fulfilled. I mean, God still did it, even without Trump being in the White House. He did it because of what he did before that. So that's part of the redemption of the Jubilee. All these things that happened was leading to that as well.
And as you said, at the exact time.
At the exact time is well, he, when I calculated this, and this was at the same time, he had just a small window of time before that election to do what he did. I mean, it was the smallest window, but he did it because God wanted that vote in. And that's all that was needed at that exact time.
Exactly. We're talking with Rabbi Jonathan Cahn, his new book, The Josiah Manifesto. Jonathan, what about the mysterious object from the Middle East that appeared in New York and D.C.?
Well, this actually was an object that was linked to the Temple of Baal that actually stood, the ancient Temple of Baal that stood in the Middle East for like 2,000 years. They took an object, they erected the Arch of Baal in New York City. And they did it just when Trump was rising to the presidency. And they did it at City Hall. I went there to film it and record it. And so we actually saw this. And the leaders of New York, they had a ceremony. They actually had music from Baal. They actually proclaimed it. They actually had a sign that said Temple of Baal. And so that appeared, it was like a war between Baal and Jehu. And then later on, when Trump nominated one of those three, which was Kavanaugh, and remember, all hell broke loose on Capitol Hill. Why? Because of they didn't want this. They didn't want abortion overturned. And so, but something happened strange in the middle of that. In the middle of those hearings, an object appears in Washington. It's the Arch of Baal now in Washington, and it appeared right in front, right in the National Mall, overlooking the Capitol Hill, where they're having it. So this war between Baal and Jehu, or Baal and God, is still waging. It's still happening. And that went all the way up to Roe versus Wade.
Jonathan, a thought came to mind, and as I was reading this in your book, my spirit became kind of, I don't know, agitated in looking at DC and looking at the Washington Monument. There's something about that bothers me. I cannot put my finger on it, and I don't know if you're prepared to address that, if there's any revelation on that. But I see this almost as a I don't know, some demonic manifestation. It doesn't set right in my spirit for whatever reason.
Yeah, I'll just say two things, which are I'm not judging the thing, but two things. One is, well, it's an obelisk, obelisk, which is a pagan, which is a pagan form. I mean, in fairness, the Capitol building also has a pagan form. It's formed after the pantheon of gods, And by the way, let me throw something else. Part of the Capitol, they believe, was actually formed after the ancient Temple of Baal. If you can imagine, that's a whole other thing. But on the other hand, I believe on the top of the Washington Monument, it says "Praise the Lord." It says, it has some like scripture, praise the Lord. Who knows? It's a mix, Bill. I mean, Washington's a mix of pagan and God. Right. So it depends who's in power, I think.
Right. I guess. Yeah. It's kind of like Paul says, like the Decapolis. I noticed that you serve many gods. You believe in many gods, right?
Yeah. Marcel. Yeah. And I mean, that's the other side. It's like we're in Rome as well, but also God is on the throne, and he moves.
Amen. Jonathan Cahn, we've got about 8 minutes left here. Okay. And I want you to kind of, take us to conclusion. Okay. Again, the book, Josiah Manifesto, available at all the usual places. It's just been released, hot off the presses, and get ready. The revelation is deep. It's fast. It will take your breath away. I'm telling you.
Yeah. What I'll do this, and thanks for, I'll give a little taste, because there's so much. Yeah. One is that even the overturning of Roe versus Wade followed exactly the 50-year mystery. Everything happened 50 years. In fact, I'll let me get another thing. In the Bible, there's a day called Sivan 23. That's the day that in the book of Esther, Mordecai issued a decree to nullify the evil decree of Haman that was bringing death. Well, when there was another case that would end up overturning Roe versus Wade, and that case was called Dobbs versus Jackson. And it was sent to the Supreme Court on Sivan 23, the day of the decree that will overturn the evil decree in the Bible. That just a little taste. The other thing is that there's another mystery called the mystery of days in the book, that all these ancient days of God, where the appointed days of God, actually lie behind all the shakings of America. Not only what was going to happen, but the actual dates. I'll just mention, without going through anything, to say that one of them is called the day of is the feast of the plague, and it's linked to a plague, ancient day of a plague and a lockdown, and that is what was behind COVID and the lockdown. The next holy ancient day is about fire, and that when that happened, fire breaks out all over America, the cities, summer of rage, everything happens. It exploded on the exact ancient day. Another one is linked to the high court. Another ancient day is linked to the high court and God doing something with it. On that day, which is the Feast of Trumpets, on that day, the Supreme Court Justice Ginsburg is taken from this world, and it opens up the seat to overturn abortion on the Feast of Trumpets. Okay, so there's so much. And then there's something called a day of turning, ancient day in Hebrew of turning. On the day of turning, America's course actually turned. Okay, and I can't go through the details except say it wasn't just the day, it was the hour, the minute, and the exact second. It was recorded on film. I mean, it's exact second. A few other things. I'm just giving it a taste, and that is that I will say this: all these mysteries, and there's much more, all come together and converge to open up a key, and it's linked to the broken altar. Now, if you look at the cover, this is a broken altar.
Yes.
And when we have no greater altar in America, I mean, horrible altar than abortion. When that altar, when that cracked, when Roe versus Wade was overturned, that was the cracking of the altar. In the Bible, that's a mega sign. That's a mega sign. That two things. One is that we are at the Josiah moment. The altars are linked to these ancient King Josiah more than any other person. He broke the altars. We are at the Josiah moment. That means we are on the verge of judgment on one side or revival on the other. And this is the most critical moment. And what this is opening up is that I believe God is giving a key, because all these things point to one person, which is Josiah. Josiah lived in a time just like this: apostasy, sexual immorality, gender confusion, and even the offering of children. Right. Josiah, yet was not overcome by the evil. He overcame it. One man changed the course of history, and we are to be that. So the last part of the book, as you know, Bill, the last part of the book is the manifesto, which I believe is the Lord giving this from the Bible, saying this is the key. What are the keys? How do we overcome? How can we stand? What are the powers we have for this moment? How do we live with how do we overcome persecution? How do we overcome apostasy? How do we protect our family? And how do we deal with our own life? That's what the 100 pages of the manifesto, and not only for this time, but basically it's for the end time. So that's why it all leads to this. There is hope, but we have to rise to that call.
Well, and as you say, Jonathan, it's not like it's going to be easy. I mean, there's going to be some suffering. There's going to be persecution. We know that. And so we need to armor up and prepare ourselves. And if that doesn't cause you to hold on to Jesus' garment all the more, I don't know what else you need.
Yeah. Listen, one of the things, Bill, about this time that we're in and the end times is that, it gets dark. The culture gets dark. But if the dark clarifies things, because the grays disappear. The grays are disappearing. And you more than ever, we have to know who we are. Exactly. That's how it was in Josiah's time. And the thing is that as the dark gets darker, God is calling the lights of God to get brighter. We got to go all out. Messiah was revolutionary. We got to become revolutionary. The book of Acts was revolutionary. It's time to become, this could be the greatest hour, truly, if we rise to it. God is looking for his Josiahs.
Exactly. Well, he's giving us hope here. It's quite clear of that. And as you say, Jonathan, I like how you described it. And you describe it in the book, is that all the gray is out. It's either black or it's white, isn't it?
That's right. That it's not that the end times are not just bad. They're also good. It's intense both ways. The power of God is on the end times. He's going to pour his spirit. The gospel is spread, and God's people become like the apostles. Because if you stand, you're going to become like Paul. If you stand, it's going to purify us. We're going to become like the prophets. It's going to get the gray out of us. It's like the dark is getting the gray out to get totally dark. It's time for the lights to get the gray out of our lives to get totally bright.
Well, the end times are here. They're amongst us. Even Dr. Billy Graham said, when he was asked if these are the last days, before he died, he said, these are the last of the last days. Are you ready? Yeah. The Josiah Manifesto, the ancient mystery and guide for the end times, is a must-read book and companion that you must not only read yourself, but to share it with everybody that you have influence over. Jonathan, remind everybody the book's availability, and we'll have about a minute for you to summarize and close things out for us. Go ahead.
Yeah, the Josiah Manifesto, literally, as you've seen it, and thank you for is literally everywhere. It just came out, so it's wherever there are books. It's on Amazon. You can go online right now. Everywhere. It's in even Walmart, Barnes & Noble, everywhere. I pray you get it not only for yourself, but get it for people in your life, because God is calling us right now in this hour. Where are we and what do we need to do? So literally everywhere. And if they want, I don't often do that, but if you want it, the ministry that I lead is called Hope of the World. If people want to we send out free gifts and free prophetic updates. It's hopeoftheworld.org. That's simple. If you want that, it's hopeoftheworld.org. But we're in New Jersey here. If you're ever, and you too, Bill, if you're ever in New Jersey, be my guest at the Jerusalem Center, where I lead the congregation.
Well, I keep threatening you that I'm going to show up, and I promise I will, no doubt, especially now that I'm on the other side of hip replacement surgery, Jonathan.
We've alerted our security.
Okay, very good. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you know why he's known as the prophetic voice of this generation. Rabbi Jonathan Cahn has been our guest. Rabbi, thank you so much. Shalom, my good friend.
Thank you, my friend. God bless you, Bill.
God bless you. Jonathan Cahn, what a special man and contribution to the body of Christ. And our thanks immensely for Jonathan for coming on the show. For more information and how you can be a part of this mighty Martinez movement to return to God and to save our country, check it out, BillMartinezShow.com. May God bless you and keep you, and make his face shine upon you. May he be gracious unto you and give you peace. Go and be blessed. Thank you so much for being with us. Have a great day.